I have 120 copies of Kill 'Em All.
Jesus Christ, dude.
It has the hype sticker on it, which is only on the first, second, and third pressing. I've got all three here just to show off. The heaviest stuff in the world to me is Napalm Death and John Coltrane. Jazz is a thing I actually don't have too many multiple copies of, except for something like this where they keep releasing it with different masters. Test pressing of Dark Side of the Moon. But with Metallica, I want every single pressing of every single format from every single country in the world, promo, test pressing, acetate. It's a checklist, and I won't be done until I have it all.
Hey, Patrick here. Welcome to another episode of Record Rooms. This is a show where I interview record collectors in their record rooms. Today, I'm talking to Doug Brown. When I walked into this interview with Doug, I thought he was a grindcore collector. That's basically all I knew about him. And very quickly, I learned that he is so much more than a grindcore collector. He is a grindcore collector, but there's a lot more to this collection than just that. He's got a massive jazz collection. He goes really deep on not just like Blue Note and Impulse, but CTI, Kudu. He's really into Creed Taylor, the guy who signed John Coltrane and his record label and his production. Trust me when I say he goes deep. From his own mouth, Doug has the biggest Metallica collection in all of Canada and one of the biggest in the world. He mentioned this to me like as soon as I walked into his house, and I just like my eyes lit up. I was like, okay, and he's not wrong. He's seriously not wrong. In fact, he has so much Metallica that I took that entire section of the interview and I broke it off into a part 2, like a standalone episode. So there's some Metallica in this episode, but part 2 is gonna be all Metallica. Trust me when I say it's worth it, it's pretty ridiculous. As a documentary filmmaker, Doug made the movie Slave to the Grind in 2018. This is a doc about like the history of grindcore. He also runs Death by Digital, which is a record label and distro where he focuses on grindcore. He puts out modern grindcore, he reissues older grindcore. So grindcore is definitely his first focus, but there's a lot more here than just that. I think there's something here for everybody. My exposure to grindcore has mostly been like touring Europe and playing with whatever like local opener, and pretty often they're grindcore. It's not necessarily like my favorite version of hardcore, but I've got a new appreciation from editing this. Like I put the Napalm Death record on my want list. It belongs on my shelf now. If you like the show, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with your friends. All that stuff helps me grow. It's the easiest, cheapest way for you to do that. If you'd like to do more than that, I set up a Patreon. Starts at $2 a month. I give away a good record every month. Stooges Funhouse, First Ramones, first pressing Shape of Punk to Come by Refused. All of these are like first or early pressings. I draw a name out of the hat at the end of the month. I give it away to one of my Patreon subscribers. Could be you. And there's ad-free versions of all the Record Rooms interviews and all of my other musical deep dives that I do. Okay, with that, let's jump into the interview with Doug Brown.
Hi there, my name is Doug Brown. I am a record collector from Toronto, Ontario. I'm also a high school teacher, a documentary filmmaker, a playwright. I'm an owner of a couple cats, have 2 children, a wife. I also run Death by Digital Productions, which is a record label and distribution company which focuses on movies that I produced, but mainly releasing grindcore releases on a global level. And we're going to talk about my ridiculous collection. He doesn't like to be held, but he's lovely. Love you, buddy. Okay.
Obviously, there's a lot of records in this basement. Mm-hmm. If we go back to the beginning, how did it start?
I started off as a cassette guy. So I'm 42. So my cousin Danny got me the Black Album in 1991 when it came out. I was 8 years old. Metallica was kind of my introduction to music. He made me a mixtape of a whole bunch of thrash and hardcore stuff at the time. There was Suicidal Tendencies on there, like early Pantera first album stuff, and Metallica, Anthrax, Slayer, Megadeth, like traditional Big Four tunes.
Big Four.
Yeah. You know, as buying a whole bunch of cassettes was really cool. I remember my mom giving me a bit of money and going into a record store and me coming out with a David Bowie record, and it was like a compilation album of his. Okay. And it was just when CDs were starting to be a thing, and like the conversation was like, why didn't you get something smaller? I was like, but it's bigger. You know,
bigger's better.
Bigger's better. So it was not like a logic. I wasn't old enough to even think about like quality or anything. It was just like, this thing's huge, so it's great.
Like the art probably had a lot to do with it.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah, it was the presentation. Like the fact that I could just see that cover. It was the Changes One Bowie. I think my copy has a skip. Like if I have a record with a skip in it, I replace it, but I still have that one.
Do you still have it?
Yes, I do. Should I pull it out?
Yeah, is it available?
Oh yeah, it's probably, where's my bees? Here it is here. This is the first. The first record I ever got. It's not in spectacular shape at all. Kind of the one that set me on this journey. And then from here, it was like a bit of a spiral into things that I liked. And, you know, as a Metallica fan, who was like really into CDs as well at that time, like I was buying all the CDs, but then whenever I saw a record, and keep in mind, it was like late 90s when records were kind of on the way out, you were able to get like Justice for All for like $3, right? So I was using like, you know, money from working at the library as somebody who was like 14 years old, buying whatever I could. Of that era, I was like the guy that had all the CDs. For those of you who are in Toronto, the big HMV downtown had an incredible like heavy metal section. They would order in imports for you. I would get like Japanese imports of like CDs, and because they would always come with like a bonus track. And that's when I started realizing I should probably get like 2 copies of every Metallica item just to see like the differences. And then I'm like, oh, there's the Spanish one. I should hunt that one down. And oh, I didn't know that France had a version. And it's like, oh, it's the same song, but a different layout.
Were you looking for different songs, as you mentioned, additional songs, or artwork variations were pulling you in?
I think what started as the song evolved into the artwork variation. And then the artwork variation evolved into history. I know it's not the most like sought after era, but like Load and Reload, there were so many CD singles, but the bonus tracks, there'd be like 6 bonus tracks. And they were like on fire, like really playing well at that time. So they're really well recorded versus like, you know, I have a lot of older Metallica bootlegs, but a lot of the stuff from the 90s sounded so good. So it was like an opportunity to hear like live versions of like Four Horsemen produced really well. And then it was like a feather in my cap, like, oh, now I have this like cool version.
But have you heard the live version?
Yes.
The Reload box set or whatever?
Yeah, exactly, right? So I was like, definitely that kid when like people would come over, they'd be like, wow, you have a lot of Megadeth. You have a lot of Metallica. You have a lot of Slayer. And it was just like a simple way of me just realizing that, yes, we have 10 studio albums, then we have 7 singles, but now we have more to collect. I should mention like things like Columbia House and BMG Music Club,
yeah,
like
of course.
Buy one and then you got 10 for free, but then you had to buy 1 at full price over the next like 3 years or whatever.
Yeah.
You had a commitment. So when it was time to pick those like 11 free or whatever the deal was, I would be like, okay, well, who thanked in the liner notes? Well, Anthrax was thanking Testament. I don't know Testament.
If they like Testament, I might like Testament.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of these thrash and hardcore guys were giving thank yous and nods to the Beastie Boys. Okay, I guess I don't just like heavy metal. And then like the Beastie Boys were thanking all their like hip hop guys, but they were thanking like the early punk movement.
Bad Brains and all
You
kinds
got
of
it,
stuff. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And like Dead Kennedys and all that stuff, because they were a punk band, you know, with like a bit of a different lineup in those like early releases.
Pollywog Stew, I think it was
Pollywog
called?
Stew, yeah, I got that on the shelf here somewhere.
Okay,
Yeah.
that punk era of the Beastie Boys, it's not, I don't think it's anybody's favorite Beastie Boys,
No.
but it's pretty cool.
It's super cool. That is a stepping stone for what they became. Ill Communication had like Tough Guy on it, right? Which was like a 2-minute hardcore tune and like distorted vocals. And so they never like totally abandoned that sound, which I always appreciated about them.
If you had to pick one gateway band, it sounds like it might be Metallica.
Yeah, Metallica was my gateway band to heavier music as well as like what influenced them.
As well as collecting, it sounds like.
Definitely. I collect music first and foremost. Like I'm a music collector. I care about what's on the groove. So 95% of the bands I collect, I just want the album. Now, there's the collector in me that's like, but I would love to have a first pressing. But the Metallica collector in me, it's like a baseball card. Well, there's 800 of this Upper Deck series, so I need all 800. Oh, there's a misprint of one of them. I need that. Take a band like Agathocles or Napalm Death. I will have like everything they've ever done, like one of every 7-inch, but like every Napalm Death thing I might have a couple different cover variations. But with Metallica, it is, I want every single pressing of every single format from every single country in the world, promo, test pressing, acetate. It's a checklist, and I won't be done until I have it all.
Wow. Okay, first of all, just wow. If you had to put a percent on it, how much is left in that Metallica journey?
Between CD, cassette, vinyl, Laserdisc, VHS, DVD, Blu-ray, maybe 1,900 pieces of Metallica. Maybe another 2,500 on top of that for knickknacks, t-shirts, postcards, backstage passes.
Okay.
Like I have like close to 200 Metallica backstage passes and like
Wow.
150 t-shirts, and it really adds up.
Yeah.
And I bet I have 15%.
Of the total amount that you could have?
Yes.
I mean, certainly when you factor in backstage passes, flyers, posters, all that kind of stuff, ephemera. It's real deep,
It gets really deep. So I'm not as deep into the ephemera, but I'll use Kill 'Em All as an example. I have 120 copies of Kill 'Em All.
Jesus Christ, dude.
So that's like an odd number of any one thing to own.
Yeah.
But if you go into Discogs, there's like 600 copies of Kill 'Em All.
Your intention is to get them all.
Of course.
Get them all.
Get them all.
Yeah.
Collect them all.
Yeah.
You know, I think the exciting part is I know I never will.
Oh, okay.
Right? Because let's say it was something that was accomplishable. Then why am I doing this?
Yeah.
To stop? When people like contemplate, like, what would you do if you won the lottery? And everybody's like, oh, I would do all these things, right? If winning the lottery meant I no longer did my hobby, it would be like the saddest thing. I would never want to win the lottery.
You like the chase.
I like the chase, right?
What does Lemmy say? He says the chase is better than the catch.
100%, right? It's diminishing returns. So like in the early days when you find something like it's so exciting, now it's just like, oh, well, I already have many copies of this. So the things that like really excite me now are test pressings, which I get once in a blue moon, or something that's been on my want list for like 20 years. And they're getting so expensive. It's not like I, have the means to be able to afford buying them outright, which is also why I buy and sell and trade. So if I, sell 20 records, I can buy one Metallica record or one like rare grindcore title that I've been after for ages that like I couldn't justify spending the money on for my bank account. But when it's just like trading money, it's just like
trading money is a separate account from the real bank account.
Yes.
Let's say you get a 126th copy of Kill 'Em All.
Sure.
You listen to it?
Yeah.
You listen to everyone that comes in the house?
Sure. So I have a few sealed pieces, but like very few. If it's like a sealed Megaforce first pressing, which actually would be impossible to tell because there's a label variation. You actually have to crack it open to but those are the sort of things where I was like, oh, I might as well keep a sealed copy. I don't really see these things as like things to be babied. Toy collectors sometimes will still keep it in the box and on the shelf, and the presentation is what you do with it. Whereas at the end of the day, like I'll get a very expensive record and like if it's sealed and I want to listen to it, I'm going to crack that thing open.
You open them up.
Open them up.
Good for you.
And
Good for you.
I will open it up and just throw it on, and then sometimes I'll film myself opening it up and send it to people who I know will make mad.
Quick interruption here. If you're looking for sleeves, consider Vinyl Storage Solutions. They make inners, outers, 7-inch, 10-inch LP, gatefold, pockets, double pockets, flaps. They make it all. It's a Canadian company, so the exchange rate is really good for Americans. And there's free shipping once you hit the minimum order. You can get 10% off your order with the coupon code PACKRAT. Okay, back to the interview. I've come across some sealed stuff. I'll never pay a premium if something's sealed, but I will buy it. And typically I'll sell it because someone else is willing to pay a premium for it. I'll buy an open copy or whatever. A couple years ago, I sold a sealed Kill 'Em All to a guy.
Probably know him.
Yeah. You probably do.
I'm not even joking.
A couple months later, he sends me an email and he goes, hey, I weighed your copy and it weighs like 40 grams less than my other sealed Kill 'Em All, so I think maybe it doesn't have an insert in it. What can you do about that? And I was just like, this is a level of record collector that I have not dealt with yet.
When I sell records and they're sealed, so I always say presumed mint.
Sure, because sometimes they're warped.
So often they're warped. Shrink wrap shrinks.
Yeah. Kind of just like generally, if you could walk me through, how do you organize this room?
Alphabetically, by artist last name. Behind the camera over there is a wall of jazz records, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's, in alphabetical order.
By first letter of last name?
First letter of last name.
Okay.
Yeah.
How do you deal with, for example, someone like Alice Cooper?
Alice Cooper should be under C, but I put Alice Cooper as an A.
Why?
Because Alice Cooper is kind of like a stage name band sort of thing, versus like Johnny Cash is under C, not J.
Yeah.
Alice Cooper is much more of an A than a C to me.
They started as a band called Alice Cooper.
That's just it.
The band breaks up, and then the singer is a solo artist under the name Alice Cooper.
Totally.
Right? I feel like a lot of people might file all of it under C, but to me, Alice Cooper, the band, goes under A, much the same that Led Zeppelin goes under L. Where does Iggy Pop go?
Under P. I know. Yeah, it's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters as long as you could justify it and find it.
I completely agree with that. Like everybody's organization system, and that's why I like asking people this question, it makes sense to them.
So where it gets really tricky is I have so many Grindcore 7-inches,
Yeah.
and they're 7-inch splits between 4 bands. I think I have 50, 60 Unholy Grave 7-inches.
Right.
They're almost all splits with other bands.
As Grindcore typically does, yeah.
Exactly. Because it's a band I like more than most of the bands I have splits with, they're all under Unholy Grave.
Sure.
Except for the Unholy Grave Agathocles split.
Under A?
Under A, because I have 150 Agathocles 7-inches. So it ends up just going to like the most dominant band. CTI starts here, it's just 8 crates. I decided to separate it because it was something I was collecting differently than standard jazz. Same reason why Metallica is not in with like my metal section, which is all over here, right?
What is it about Creed Taylor specifically that captures your interest?
I'm a jazz and fusion drummer, and that was like his bread and butter. That was his sound. But things like Freddie Hubbard and Milt Jackson and Bob James, that stuff was like so funky. So yes, it was the music, but I could spot Creed Taylor production a mile away. There was something about it, his use of horns, his arrangements, tightened the sound up in a way. It wasn't loose and free like a lot of like the Blue Note stuff or the Impulse stuff or the Riverside stuff. What started off as like a label that I was really, really into as like in terms of like a sound and a production quality, the artwork was so beautiful. And then like the thickness of the spine. So as somebody who then like, let's say completed the entire American and Canadian line of every single CTI records and every single Kudu and all the subsidiaries, and I had it all, I was like, I should probably get them all in Japanese pressings too. So an example being like, George Benson, I would have the, an American pressing of this, but then different Japanese. Diodato 2, I love this album. Here's a Mexican pressing, here's a Japanese pressing. Oh, look at that, an obi variation, and then another obi variation. There's the quad, and then another obi variation. Last name of artist all the way along to here, until we get to the end here, which all CTI test pressings here. Something you got by Art Farmer, super funky album. It's a white label test pressing. Often a lot of promos will have a Japanese characters in a box like that. It's actually similar to even on my Metallica promos. That is like DIY, somebody got it. So I'm not a first-hand owner of this, but like that's history. Like I love that it has exchanged hands so many times. And then it just goes into grindcore, heavy metal. And then heavy metal continues all along the top here. Heavy metal then goes to around here, and that's when it goes to like my heavy metal comps. And then classic rock, which kind of goes all the way to the bottom. And then we get into some soundtracks, and then this is obscure.
It kind of reminds me of the line from Full Metal Jacket, when he goes, I think it says something about the duality of man. So going from your jazz section straight to your grindcore section is whiplash.
Yeah, for sure. The heaviest stuff in the world to me is Napalm Death and John Coltrane. Both were subversive at their time. I know that now you're going to see jazz artists for, $200 in concert, and that's probably never going to happen with grindcore, but they came from the same place. Yeah, there's a commonality amongst it all.
Interesting.
I have a lot of 7s as well. These are all little flight cases of 7s up at here, and then this is pretty much, and it goes all the way back, but this is all grindcore 7-inch all along here. 7 Minutes of Nausea, Senseless Apocalypse, great one from Japan. Hopefully I don't pull anything too offensive.
Always a gamble with grindcore.
Yeah, it's always a gamble. Bob James, 7-inch, and like that cover is just like so cool and so rich. The Japanese counterpart for it, the text, it's a different sleeve. This one was just like an insert that was put in with it. Here's the Japanese cover of it. Just the way that they would like match the layouts, and it was just such a clever bit of work that they did there.
Something about obi strips, it's like catnip for record collectors. I find that the people who are the deepest into record collecting are into Japanese stuff.
Yes.
Sometimes profoundly into Japanese.
Yeah, and I am definitely profoundly into Japanese stuff. I have all the Pink Floyd albums, but then now I'm getting all of them with the obi strip Japanese. There's a culture of just taking care of things in Japan. If you buy something that is graded as VG plus and it's importing from Japan, it's near mint. Obi means sash, as in like a sash that a beauty pageant contestant would wear.
Yeah.
But then the insert, which is often like a 2 to 4 page like fold out, would have credentials, a bit of history, all in Japanese. There might be like 20 copies for sale globally and you can find one easily, but there's only 2 that have everything.
Yeah, you love the challenge.
I love the challenge, and collecting Japanese stuff provides that challenge.
I'm a big Ramones collector. Ramones are the band that I collect.
Okay.
Like, I got 4 copies of the first LP, which is not as many as they made. What I don't have is a Japanese press of the first LP. And if you look on Discogs, there's lots for sale. $100, $200 kind of thing. But if it has the Obi, it's a grand.
Yeah. So, and well, you're probably like, I would be willing to spend $100, but I'm not spending $100 on an incomplete record.
That's why I don't have it.
Yes. Yeah. Just another quick little thing about why I love collecting like 7 inches. Kathy McCord, on the back, it has all this like radio information. And I know this would like turn some people off. You're like, why is there writing on the cover? I'm like, this was used, and it was used for a purpose. Inside has the press kit, not even written in English, right? So I bought this from a radio station that was like downsizing. It was done with a typewriter. Somebody typed this thing up and then made like a couple copies of it.
You're my sweet sugar cane, sugar candy cane.
Do you clean your records?
No, I use like a microfiber cloth that is like pristine and then like, you know, a nice diluted amount of like water and a special type of cleaner and whatnot. One day I might invest in one, but like maybe it'll be a retirement project. Sure. I don't need things to sound perfect. You know, like, yes, I'm listening to some really nice sounding jazz records, but I'm also listening to like Carcass bootlegs. You know what I mean? Like how pretty do I want my music to sound like? I upgrade my needle every, 1,500 hours. And so things are going to sound good.
Yeah. You also sound like the kind of guy who like, you probably don't buy it if it's not in good condition.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I have a VG Plus absolute minimum, unless it's something that is like so
Bonzo rare.
Super rare.
Yeah. So what is it that draws you in when you're taking a chance in a record?
Sure. So it is layout. Okay, there's like a black and white DIY aesthetic to it. This looks pretty punk. I have a feeling that they did this themselves. There was a lot of struggle into making this. This is so obscure I've never heard it. Or it's common identifiers to other things that I like. Like, oh, I love this label. This was this year. So that the other things they released in that, 2-year period were also killer. So it's probably pretty good. Or this producer did this, it's like, oh, this is the dude from Converge. Everything he does is punchy and a kick in the face. But even if I don't like the tunes, I'm going to love the production on it.
Kurt Ballou?
Kurt Ballou. Yeah. I like his production. So I'm going to give that a go. Jazz stuff, it's players. Oh, I've never heard of this, but it has Elvin Jones on drums. It has Billy Higgins on drums. It has Tony Williams on drums. I'm going to buy it.
At the very least, the drums are going to be good.
100%. Never been let down by an Elvin Jones recording. As much as we're talking about heavy stuff a lot today, like my favorite drummer of all time is probably Elvin when it comes to like playing. Like, oh my gosh.
In 2018, you made the documentary Slave to the Grind. You spent time with Siege and Napalm Death and Unholy Grave. Considering how, I'll say, intentionally inaccessible grindcore is like to the ear, did you find like an apprehension from the people behind the music to being willing to discuss it and dissect it?
Yes and no. Like, well, I might be known as a filmmaker in some respects, or maybe other grindcore record collectors knew me at that point. It's not like I was a international name. So there was certainly a lot of pushback for like, who is this? When you are documenting something that is so niche, it's like yours. I don't think it was ever like I don't want the world to hear about this. I think it was I don't want the world to hear about this in the wrong way. My approach to this was I did not edit Slave to the Grind. I had 2 people who did not like grindcore making this film. And to me, that was important. There was an objectivity in what they were doing. They were focused on story. They were focused on history. I'd interview a band. I was like, this band is so important. They'd be like, well, let's find out. You say they're so important.
Yeah.
But if none of the other people bring them up as important, they're not as important as you think
They're
they
just
are.
important to you.
They're just important to me. Unfortunately, bands got left on the cutting room floor. Bands that were only in there for a little bit, or bands that got too much time. And I feel that like once people saw the film, for the most part, people were pretty happy about it. One interview begot the next. So it was one interview at a time. Once I did my interview with like the 4th member of Napalm Death, it was like, okay, the guys in Carcass were like, okay, we'll do this. At the end of the day, I wanted to make a film about a genre that meant a lot to me, music that was super important, just try to show the world in a inaccessible way and an accessible way, inaccessible music. DIY self-released it through Death by Digital. After we won our like third or fourth award for the film, like we did very well in the film festival circuit, and I self-released it in like theatrically. I think we played in 160 cities. That's a lot for one person to manage, as I was still like a full-time high school teacher, but would more people have seen it if it was on Amazon Prime? Yeah. Do I care? No. I made some ethical decisions, which I also felt were indicative of the genre itself. I could not have partnered with anybody with corporate backing if I was going to make that film.
Certainly not before you did the interviews.
Certainly not before.
So given how, again, I'm going to use the word inaccessible, used as well, grindcore is to the ear. What do you think it is that attracts people to it?
The intensity, the brevity, the speed, the gristle. Grindcore needs to have the speed of the blast beat. It has to be harsh. It should be raw. This is not something that everybody agrees with. Like, I still want it produced where I can hear everything evenly, but like the second I'm starting to hear like hyper compression and it gets a little too pretty, I'm just like, that's not my grindcore. You know?
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a click track genre.
No, there's no like daddy's money in grindcore, if that makes sense.
Yeah, oh, it makes a lot of sense.
You know, early Napalm Death albums like Scum and From Enslavement to Obliteration are still like the best for a reason. What is cool about this particular pressing, this is the first pressing of it, it has the hype sticker on it, which is only on the first, second, and third pressing. And I've got all three here just to show off, just because they were done in 3 different colors. By the time this was released, there was not a single original band member. There's a different lineup from side A and side B.
Really?
Yes. Before the first pressing, here's a test pressing of this album, fully autographed, on the sleeve there, or on the actual label. This is like a hyper rare piece. When I was younger, somebody once said, like, here's the 5-point scale. You got punk rock, you have death metal. Right in the middle, you have grindcore. If it's slightly this way leaning, it's death grind. And if it's slightly this way leaning, it's power violence.
Yeah.
And while I like kind of agree with that, and not everybody's going to agree with what I'm about to say here, grindcore is punk rock. In its attitude, in its execution, it is more punk than it is metal. Whereas like somebody who's like into grind, they might be like, it's my favorite type of metal. And that is not to put them down, but like as somebody who put the entire genre like under a microscope and like interviewed the people who essentially founded it and invented it and like coined the terms, I was like, this is punk rock. This one means a lot to me, and it's the first 12-inch that my label put out exclusively. Doing an LP on your own is a lot of work. It's storage, it's shipping and whatnot. That one is just like such an important one for me. Nasm is one of my all-time favorites as well. We released this on black as well as purple in another Death by Digital release. And again, like I am just releasing old live tunes from all my favorite heroes. These are some newer records here, but like they're just so fun. Earache recently did these like fluid and cover slime packs. That was the blood, and this is the slime here.
Are you at all worried that those might leak and contaminate the records next to them?
So I took them out of the double protective sleeve that I have this in when it's normally on the shelf, just to show them off today. But yes, I'm worried. Earlier, I was mentioning like Pink Floyd. You know, this is an example of just kind of like how I like to collect. So Canadian first pressing. I love having Canadian first pressing as a Canadian. The original first pressing of the MoFi release, it has this yellow strip across the top, which is a original master recording. It makes it sound just a little bit better. A complete Japanese pressing of it with inserts, posters, and booklet. This is a test pressing of Dark Side of the Moon, and it's a Canadian test pressing. And when I got this, I was the only known owner in the world. It does not actually come with the cover, stickers, and posters. I hunted those down separately just for the presentation of it. This was found in when the CBC record collection was bought out by somebody who I know. I purchased it from him, and it also came with like a trade that involved some children's bicycles for my daughter at the time.
That's a period correct test press.
Yes, yeah. And one of one that I was the one who logged it on Discogs. It has many hundreds of people that now have it in their want list, and
that's incredible.
My kids can deal with that when I die. I went through a period when I was collecting heart records for doctors. So these is like medical heart patterns. Doctors would sit here and like analyze this stuff. It would have the actual heart waves. So you could listen in and they'd be like figure 12.
Have you ever listened to those?
Every one of them. Yeah. They're boring. This is the Nothing record album. It comes with the lyric sheet, the poster. There's grooves, it plays, it tracks, but there's no music on it. It is silence. Side A, or is it B? At 33, 45, or 78, doesn't even matter. When you buy collections of stuff, these are like the weird things that pop in it. I'm like, oh, I gotta keep that. I think every record collector, once you get to like a certain point, you're after the Beatles Butcher cover. Yesterday and Today is a compilation album of tracks from all the Beatles albums up into this one that the label had taken off. But the Beatles were mad. They're like, you butchered our other albums. You butchered our babies. So what they did when they posed for their photo shoot, they also brought in all of these parts of like meat from a butcher shop. They took a whole bunch of baby dolls, decapitated them, posed with them, and then laughed and posed, and then sent it off to somebody who slipped it by. And then this came out, and people went nuts. The first one, which is the most rare, and I do not have, that is the First State cover. They got it, it went out. The label tried to do something, they're like, let's burn a whole bunch of them as we press some others. But we need to keep some in circulation because all of our promo and advertisements were there. So they took a printed cover, they slapped it on. And that's called the Second State. On the trunk, you can usually see the V in Ringo's jacket there, like where the black shirt is underneath.
The black triangle is
the
really
black
the
triangle.
easiest way.
Now the Third State is my favorite, and that's what this is. That's when somebody had seen that and they steam cleaned it off. So most Third States are just destroyed because there's somebody just peeled it off. This is actually a pretty solid Third State.
I was going to say it at a glance, I thought it might have been a First State.
Yes.
Because of how clean it is.
I'm not a huge Beatles fan. Like, I have one of all their albums, just like every collecting nerd does, but it's not like they're my favorite band, but the collector in me, that's like a piece of history.
That's the one.
That's the one. Yeah. That's the one, right? Fats Theus, Blackout, it's a funk soul album, but recently I was able to get a first pressing test pressing of this. I just adore this label, so it's like, if I'm going to get this, I'm going to get this. And I'm obviously still after the Japanese pressing. Some CTI titles, I have up to 10 copies of each of their albums, but some of them I just got 1 or 2. As a drummer, jazz is like the thing that drives me. So a lot of the jazz that I have, it's just because I love the drumming. It's not the world's largest jazz collection, but it is like precisely acute in its type. A lot of spiritual jazz, a lot of stuff like Albert Ayler, a lot of Archie Shepp, a lot of John Coltrane, so spiritual saxophone stuff. So it's alphabetical all the way throughout. My Coltrane selection is like, pretty big, but probably one of my all-time favorites of all time is Love Supreme. Jazz is a thing I actually don't have too many multiple copies of, except for something like this where they keep releasing it with different masters and different alternate takes, which is what I do love about the nerdy jazz community. A lot of Miles Davis originals, things on like 6i labels. I'm really big into Herbie Hancock, both his upright piano as well as his like fusion era when he went to the Fender Rhodes. A lot of like the funky fusion-y guys like Bob James, like of course Japanese pressings of all these, because I truly believe that like the Japanese pressings sound amazing. So here's a jazz album that like not a lot of people talk about. It's on Black Saint label. Archie Shepp was like a spiritual jazz player, little avant-garde, a little outside the box. First track of this is called Hypnosis, and it's just like one 20-minute jazz tune. It's like, oh, it's beautiful. Also, for those who are getting into like some audiophile stuff, the Tone Poet series by Blue Note, they've done such a wonderful job. Some of them are a little expensive, but like for like under $50, you can get some of like the best sounding recordings out there.
I'm sure you've noticed sort of a narrative shift around streaming in the last maybe year, I would say.
Yeah.
The politics of streaming is starting to polarize some people. So with that, a lot of younger music fans are starting to buy physical media. You can't be nostalgic for an iPad. You can't be nostalgic for Spotify, right? Do you have any advice for young collectors who are getting into this for the first time?
Don't spend $100 on deluxe 3LP reissues of albums. I cannot stress that enough. It is a bit of a money trap. I saw a What's the Story Morning Glory by Oasis. Great album, sure. And it was like $125. And if you're like a new collector and you go in, you're like, that is the price of this album, you're going to price yourself out of the hobby and then the hobby's going to die. We need more things that are like $30 and under. Don't turn your nose up on buying used. Used is where like the character of records are. Like do a bit of research, like buy a shitty looking record and then take it home and then put it on your turntable and go, okay, that's what that stuff sounds like. So you know what to not buy in the future, right? Like I think that it's important to educate yourself. Go to secondhand shops, visit your local record stores. Don't just spend your money on Discogs. Contribute back to the community that is like feeding. Record fairs forever is my favorite place to buy music. It's exciting. You don't need to be there to spend $20 for the early bird. Just go for the general admission. Sometimes it's free. Sometimes it's only $5, $10. And if you're into like punk and grind, like go to shows and support the artists. Buy it directly from the band. Support the traveling distros. Those are the people that are truly keeping the scene alive. You're paying for the gas that's going to take them to their next venue. That would be my advice.
Lovely. Well, Doug, seriously, thank you for the tour. Thank you for welcoming me into your house, showing me your stuff. We could have done 5 of these episodes.
I have a problem, and I recognize that, but I also, I love this.
Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the interview. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a part 2 with all of Doug's Metallica records. If it's not out when you're watching this, check back in a week. If you're watching this after a week since it's been uploaded, it's already out. If you like this enough to still be watching in the outro, well, consider signing up for my Patreon. Like I said, starts at $2 a month. There's a record giveaway, DJ sets, ad-free record rooms, ad-free interviews. It helps me keep the show going. I'd appreciate it. And even if you don't, I'll see you in the next one.